we make our decisions based on past experience and past learnings. So if we don't have anything else to operate on, anything else to help make a decision, then we're just going to keep doing what we know. And we don't know anything else. So we're kind of just, again, stuck.
Welcome to Get Unstuck On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Brent Stromwall. Brent is a seasoned professional EOS implementer and the visionary behind Odigos. With over 3 decades of corporate leadership experience, Brent's journey began as an engineer at Polytron, a leading consulting and engineering firm supporting manufacturers. Over the years, he's played a pivotal role in scaling the business nearly 15 times its original size, transforming it into a nationally recognized firm. Brent's expertise extends beyond engineering to encompass sales, marketing, partner channels, and a wide spectrum of strategic initiatives. All of these aim at fostering team alignment around shared values, vision, and purpose. Having retired from Polytron at the close of 2019, Brent now dedicates his time to empowering others to gain control of their businesses while rediscovering the joy and freedom that comes with success. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
By means of introduction, Brent and I have had the opportunity to meet in person many times. We are both part of a group called Trustegrity, and as a result, I've had a chance to not only get to know Brent, but to also hear him facilitate conversations that really just kind of highlight why he is so good at what he does. So let's start with that, Brent. I introduced you as a professional EOS implementer. And I suspect that there are viewers and listeners who are not really familiar with what is EOS.
EOS is an acronym. It stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And what the Entrepreneurial Operating System is, it's a set of proven, simple, practical tools that help business leaders and owners get more of what they want from their business. And we help them get that by strengthening 6 key components of their business. But essentially, they're getting better at vision. That's getting everyone 100% on the same page with where they're going and how they're going to get there. Traction, which is instilling discipline and accountability into the entire organization so that everybody's helping achieve the vision. And then lastly is healthy. We want our client teams and entire organizations to be a more functional group of folks that enjoy working together, work better together, and just have fun doing it. So it's vision, traction, and healthy is what they get.
You know, I have had the opportunity in the last few years to work with a number of organizations that have embraced EOS. And as a result, I've had a chance to see firsthand how it can make a profound difference in how things get done and the result in terms of that sense of healthy. I really like the way you just described that. Is EOS as an approach to business, is it best suited for certain sized organizations?
Yeah, well, obviously in the name, it's entrepreneurial. So it's geared toward, designed for an entrepreneurial type organization. Generally, it fits better for those that are between 10 and 250 employees. But I have examples of smaller organizations as well as much larger organizations that have found it very successful.
You have experience starting as an engineer and over the span of decades be part of an organization that grew, continued to grow? I mean, I think I mentioned it was a 15-fold increase from its original size. Let's go back to your Polytron experience just for a moment. What were the things that you observed that organization experienced with that type of phenomenal growth record?
Yeah, this is Polytron experienced, I call it seasons of growth, which is very typical with any organization. In fact, there's research done that companies, organizations, teams, even us as individuals have seasons of growth if we think about our own lives. But we experience seasons of growth. And as we got to a certain point, certain size, a certain capacity, we realized that we would start to hit a ceiling. And in order to break through that ceiling, we had to change something, or some, I would say some things, plural. Primarily, it was our mindset. Have to, in order to break through that ceiling, we have to change the way we're thinking so that we change what we're doing.
You know, as I reflect on my own personal experience, right out of college, I went to work for a decent sized entrepreneurial-minded organization that kept getting bigger and bigger. And it seemed to kind of lose that entrepreneurial feel. When I joined another organization, I saw the exact same thing happen. It kind of shifted a bit from entrepreneurial to more corporate. And it was just readily apparent. Do you see that happening with growing organizations?
To an extent, I would say it varies, right? So your mileage may vary, right, depending upon which organization you're at. But I'd like to question you and say, what do you mean that entrepreneurial spirit? How would you define that or clarify that for me?
You're actually taking the question I was going to probably throw back to you, so I'm glad you asked. I have found that people who start businesses oftentimes are entrepreneurial minded. That is, they have a great idea, or they have just a vision to see something. They've got lots of drive. There's a willingness to try anything and everything to see what works. And that what ends up happening is there's a kind of a leanness, there's an eagerness, there's a, how can we continue growing this? How do we meet our customer needs but stay nimble? I'm describing more of what I see in entrepreneurs versus those people who I see who are in corporate roles. Right. And I guess what I would say to you is, in my experience, corporate is less growth-minded and they're more protect turf-minded. It's setting up systems that sometimes can really bog things down. Yes. So when I think of entrepreneurs, I first think of the business owner. I think of that owner who started something, and success, as good as it is, presents a whole new set of challenges. And they're not necessarily equipped to give the attention and have the ability to lead confidently through that. That is in large part why I'm drawn to EOS. It strikes me as an approach to running the business that is practical. It kind of breaks things down in a way that not only is understood by the owner, the key leadership, but it permeates the organization. Yeah. So I would say to you, when I think of entrepreneurial, I think of some of those adjectives that are kind of hard to put a finger on it. When I've seen EOS in practice, what I see is an ability to run the business, but not get bogged down in minutia. It stays focused on what is it you're trying to accomplish, and it engages everybody in the process.
Right. Yeah, so EOS for sure. I think that's a good, some of the adjectives you use, by the way, I would agree with. Entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurial businesses seem to be more nimble, although being nimble isn't their goal. It's more of a result. they seem to be more, I'll say less risk averse. So they're willing to try new things, willing to take chances, if you will, on some new things. They're very, my experience is that entrepreneurial businesses are very customer focused.
Yeah.
Because they're in their early stages of growth. That's all they're doing is serving the customer, right? So once you think about the growth of an organization, you come up with an idea, as you said, right? We've got an idea. We need to make sure we can sell it and get customers. So that's very much the focus. And once we now have a viable business, then we can start to do things to help improve the efficiency of the business, the way we manage it, the processes, hone it in to get very, very good and become excellent at what we love to do. So I would say, and there's more creativity within an entrepreneurial organization. Not that it's lacking from corporate America, but we certainly seem to see entrepreneurial businesses are nurturing that creativity or giving space for it to occur versus clamping down with procedures and processes that kind of take out judgment and flexibility from people's day-to-day jobs, candidly. So there's an approach that we have with EOS about specifically processes. We call it the 2080 rule. We document, we encourage our client organizations to document their core processes to the 20% level. And from that, they will get 80% of the results. The rest is left for that entrepreneurial creativity, judgment, even raising people up to think, how can we do this better? Is this the best process, or is there something that even we could do better, or allow us flexibility even to serve customers in a way that maybe we hadn't thought of yet? So it's a kind of entrenched within how we approach working on the business, just and continues to nurture that entrepreneurial, all those adjectives that you mentioned, we just talked about.
Yeah, I had not heard it explained that way. That's very, very helpful. I introduced you as a EOS implementer. For those who are not familiar, what does an implementer do?
As an implementer, I have three roles. I say three responsibilities to my clients. I'm a teacher, so I teach them the entrepreneurial operating system. We have tools in our toolbox. We have exercises to vet out the things that we're trying to vet out, core values, for example. We want to discover those, not pick them from a list. So there's things that I'm teaching to my client teams. The next is I'm a facilitator. So I meet with the leadership teams on a regular basis. And so I'm facilitating them being collaborative and creative and coming up with what's the best part about themselves, and where I'm going to say do some internal searching. What is it that you want? Because this is about you, not me, right? So helping them align and gain clarity over where they're headed, how they're going to get there. And then lastly, I'm a coach. I get to work with dozens of businesses. And I just, it's kind of weird. I just love talking business with people. But I get to hear about approaches from other folks and other organizations. I'm a study of businesses. So I get to bring that to each of my clients, and I'm the guy who's on the sideline, basically. And I get to watch you play, and I get to help you like a coach with different plays or trying a different approach to a play, that kind of stuff. So I'm a teacher, facilitator, coach.
As I'm reflecting on those three roles, I can see how your past experience dovetails very nicely into each of those three roles. this EOS concept that we're talking about, organizations to embrace this have to be kind of fully in for this to work. But in your experience thus far, do you find the types of issues that arise, is there any pattern to what might have resulted in a business owner or a business leadership team say, we need to bring in Brent? What might be the kinds of things that would trigger them reaching out and say, we would like help?
Yeah. Well, one of them, I'll say common things that I see. One of them is very related to the title of this podcast, which is they're stuck. Mm-hmm. They don't know what to do next is some of the challenge, right? They've tried some things, but they've just stuck. They're stuck. Mm-hmm. Another reason they might be stuck is they're overwhelmed, right? And they just don't have the capacity to be thinking about what's it gonna be like 3 years from now, right? They're so entrenched and overwhelmed by the day to day and the fires that they're fighting on a daily basis. They just don't take the time out to think ahead. Are we carving the road through the forest in the right direction? And then the last thing is they simply are fearful. Many clients they've tried some things and failed, so they're fearing doing that again. If I make the wrong decision, am I going to ruin the organization? Am I going to lose some of my great people? So there's fear has just kind of locked them into where they are, and they just can't break out of that and go beyond.
Well, you knew this question was coming. I asked this of each guest, but maybe could you share an example? You don't have to divulge the client name, but could you share an example where perhaps a client did in fact get stuck? And in what ways did you help them get unstuck?
Sure. I have many examples because every single one of my clients is stuck in some way, shape, or form. So that is a common thing. I'll share one example. A client, when we first had our first meeting, he and his team, he sat at the table, and I give him kudos for this because there's humility and vulnerability in what his statement meant. Mm-hmm. But he turned to his team and said, I simply don't know what to do next. I simply don't know what to do next. So I've asked Brent to come in here and help us, give us something else, because I don't know. So a lot of, and this happens to us individually in our own lives, we make our decisions based on past experience and past learnings. So if we don't have anything else to operate on, anything else to help make a decision, then we're just going to keep doing what we know. Oftentimes, for example, in the instance of fear, we'll revert to some behaviors or decision making that maybe not be best, but it's what we know, and we don't know anything else. So we're kind of just, again, stuck. So at any rate, when they started seeing a different way to approach the business, a different way to structure their leadership team, a different way to even think about some of the aspects of business, then their mindset starts to shift, and they start to take on a new, I'm hesitant to use this word because not identity, but almost a new identity, a new organizational identity. We now are operating under a different framework, a different operating system that gives us the flexibility to do the things that we want to do as an entrepreneurial business, but still some very proven things, tools, practices that are going to help us take it wherever we want to go.
My understanding is EOS is not a one and done approach. You have to do a lot of work on the front end, but it's almost greenfield. There's a constant refining process. Mm-hmm. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, every organization goes through seasons of growth. And so every time an organization hits the ceiling, we've got to shift again, right? So we've got to change again. We've got to do something different. And we have, in my opinion, most organizations, teams don't recognize that they've hit a ceiling or that they're going to, right? We just don't acknowledge we have these seasons of growth, so we're not prepared for it. And when it hits, like, what's going on? What do we do now? So we actually work on what we call the 5 leadership abilities that help an organization not avoid hitting the ceiling, but to break through it sooner, quicker. Because we're all going to hit the ceiling. Every organization does. How do we be nimble, flexible, creative, and break through that quicker so that we can continue to grow? I'm not the one who coined this, but if you're either growing or dying, really. So we can either break through the ceiling, keep growing as an organization, or stay at status quo, which means ultimately we're just going to trail off and die, or the organization will come apart. So
that's a great explanation. As you kind of reflect on your work as a EOS implementer, I know you've worked in a variety of industries, a variety of sized organizations. You've kind of shared the size organization that might be the best fit for this, at least initially. You've said something earlier I'd love to follow back up on, and that is the decision to buy. Is it a head decision or a heart decision? When you mentioned the word fear and the ability that business leader had to just look his or her team in the eye and say, I don't know what to do. I personally believe that's a sign of strong leadership.
Yeah, I agree.
But to acknowledge fears and to acknowledge that if the leader has those, it's inevitable within the organization. Have you experienced what literally is almost a visual reduction of that fear that can sometimes permeate a culture?
Explain what you mean by visual reduction. I
probably want a good way of phrasing the question, but what I would say is I have worked with and in organizations that fear is more of the theme than anything else.
Yeah.
The fear is, I just don't want to get it wrong. The fear is, if I get it wrong, it's going to reflect poorly on me or my team. Yeah. And as a result, there's a tendency to kind of hold back, to play it safe. So I'm speaking in terms almost in how that could slow progress or momentum. What you described earlier, at least the impression I have, is fear of, we don't know what to do. We may have taken it as far as we can. We're not quite sure what to do. If we don't do something, the fear that emerges. Do you ever see fear permeate a culture?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen it exist. It's pervasive within a culture. It also just might be a couple of folks at the leadership team level that I'm working with. They're fearful, and so that can slow things down. And it does. Fear slows us down. If you think about I'm not going to get into it too deep. Psychologically and emotionally, we're driven by 2 things. One is fear, and one is what I say joy, a desire to achieve a certain new outcome versus fear of not knowing anything other than the current outcome. So, fear drives us to try to grab control, as an example. And I see that happening a lot in leadership teams. One organization that I've worked with, they're one of the owners of the business, very fearful of letting go, fearful of his staff not doing it the way he wants it done, fearful of his own inabilities or lack of, so he's almost that holds him back too, and holds the organization back too, because he's striving for perfection rather than just doing better, progress and excellence. So, fear can, from that example, that actually is holding people back. When people are being held back, they start to, they start to recognize the symptoms of that without knowing what it is or what to do about it. And generally they start to lose morale, lose engagement, to use a business term out there. And then they end up looking for something else because that people want to grow. We have this innate desire that we are created to grow and to improve ourselves. And when we're held back, particularly by fear, it's a real downer. I've been in environments that fear is pervasive and people avoid each other. There's closed door meetings going on that are kind of secretive, and people are assuming what other people are thinking or saying, and it's very dysfunctional, and it's just a bad environment for us to try to thrive in. We can't thrive in that.
Brent, I was hoping this conversation would go this way because I also wanted to make sure that we came back to something that I used in introducing you. And I guess I'm going to put in the context of a business owner.
Okay.
And that is, you describe yourself and the process that you help organizations with, help these owners rediscover the joy in freedom that comes with success. Joy being the opposite, perhaps, of fear on that. Can you elaborate?
Sure. And I would say, I'm going to twist your words or reword it a little bit. I don't believe joy and freedom comes from success, but we can have joy and freedom while succeeding. That makes sense.
Makes perfect sense, and I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I believe I can have joy and freedom all the time, no matter my circumstances. Joy is not circumstantial for me. In fact, it's not circumstantial for anybody. There's a world-renowned doctor. His name's Dr. Alan Shore. He's out of UCLA. He defines joy as someone is glad to be with me. So if someone's glad to be with me, I can be in joy, meaning my brain is responding in a way that's all the good chemicals, that mix of oxytocin and dopamine and the serotonin, all the good things in my brain that are healthy for my brain to be nurtured and developed. That comes from joy. That comes from someone else being glad to be with me. And that's when I'm going to be my best. That's when my brain is going to be operating at its best. And so I say, despite circumstances, despite where you are today in your business, you can be in joy, and we can be striving for some growth and success for the business. So I hope that's helpful. Does that help?
It's very helpful. You have described yourself to me and to others as you kind of gave yourself a label in terms of an engineer. Help me with that. What is
right? A relational engineer?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And those are concepts that don't necessarily go together. But that's kind of who you are. It's kind of how you go up. It seems to be how you go about doing what you do. Let's speak to that just a little bit. Why is a relational engineer very helpful to a client who brings you in to implement EOS?
Yeah. So I would say the reason I do that is because I am a degreed engineer, a licensed engineer. I have a career founded on engineering, doing the engineering tasks and functions for my clients. So I'm an engineer, but at the same time, I'm relational. I want to work together with other people. We are more successful when we are working together in a healthy way with other people. So my focus is both the process and tasks and get it done things that are around engineering, if you will, or process, and coupled with being relational. Let's make sure that we are focused also on how are we doing this together, not just what we're doing, but how we're doing it. And I encourage all of my clients to help themselves to define what is the best possible way we can clarify for anyone in our organization or who might join us that this is how we do things, how we treat our customers,
yep,
how we treat each other, how we act together in a meeting, for example. And I'll use this as an example also. Most leaders, when they're holding a meeting, have some guidelines for their meeting. It's how we're going to act in this meeting. Doesn't necessarily apply to a one-on-one when we're out there talking together, but for this meeting, this is how we act. And so that's what I'm encouraging my clients to do is let's figure out the best way we can to define what it's like us to do as we're working together. And we can come up with what we call 3 to 7 core values that help us define that unique aspect of our culture. It makes us unique to anyone else. So the joy is going to come when we have more and more people who are like us, who act like us, who treat us the same way, who, let's say, one of my clients, I love this, they use the term convivial. I had to look it up.
Me too.
Convivial is just friendly, right? We're friendly. We are easy to get along with. We enjoy being together. Wow, what a great word! And by the way, it gives somebody a what does that mean? So it even draws people in to want to know more about it because most people don't know the term convivial. But that's a great way to say, hey, we're going to be friendly here while we're in the office. And if you don't want to be friendly, or if we recognize you're not being friendly, we're going to call it out, right? And we're going to hold you to it. So it's how we do things, not just what we're doing.
Brent, we've had a pretty wide range conversation together today. As you reflect on that conversation, what do you want to be the takeaways for our listeners?
I would, I'll say I'm an evangelist. I'm looking over my bookshelf right now in front of me. I have several books lined up that are all about joy, all about the psychology and emotional maturity that we can experience to experience joy together. And I would say, I hope, and my hope, and part of my lifelong goal is to help others recognize we can be in joy despite circumstances. It's not about being happy. It's about being joyful, and joyful is relational. So let's be with people. Let's become the people that we want to be with. So that's one thing. The other thing is, hopefully maybe this has helped trigger a mindset change for some folks. We need to change our mindsets. We're not going to grow without learning something new, without trying something new. And back to your comments about that entrepreneurial spirit, let's be a little risky in that. Even though we're fearful, right? Fear is a negative, unpleasant emotion, I could say. We can still have joy and be striving toward or desiring something that's even better. So we can have that fear and still move forward with new approaches, new tools, new ways to do things, despite the fact that we don't know exactly how it's going to turn out. So those are the two things I would hope that people walk away is be in joy and seek to shift your mindset.
Well, to some extent, this conversation did just that for me. It shifted my mindset in terms of my awareness of EOS and how it can help organizations. And it really has been a pure joy to spend some time with you recording this podcast. But before we wrap up, let me ask our listeners a question. You ever wonder why people follow your lead? Is it out of obligation, or is it because they truly believe in your vision? Drawing from years of Fortune 500 HR and executive coaching, I've seen the essence of leadership. It's clarity and confidence. It's about practical solutions that deliver bottom line results. With a tailored approach, we'll address your unique leadership challenges head on. If you're ready to lead with impact, visit bench-builders.com. Let's unlock your leadership potential and make real strides towards your goals. Until we meet again, focus on leading in a way that inspires others to follow, not because they have to, but because they want to. Brent, thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. If our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I'm going to say there's two ways. One is via LinkedIn. It's Brent Stromwall is my account. So linkedin.com/Brent Stromwall. And then the other way is to possibly visit my website, and there's a way to schedule a call with me on that. I think it's call me or let's talk. I think the button is let's talk. The website is odigos.llc, odigos.llc.
Excellent. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate it. And I had joy speaking with you and having our conversation as well. Thanks.
It's always nice to hear. I also want to thank our subscribers for joining us. I hope you have picked up on some quick wins from Brent that will help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.